A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars Quarry, Episode 1 The Dead Mandalorian. On the outer rim metropolis world of Taris, criminals reign. From the drugs and illicit dealings of the HUTT syndicates to the nefarious machinations of the Haxion Brood, there's ample opportunity for the scum and villainy of the galaxy to make a name for themselves, and no small number of credits. Four opportunistic bounty hunters race through the tangled debris of the Taris underworld, following a mysterious lead at the behest of their client, URZO the HUTT. But as word of the quarry gets out, the cybernetic hunters of the Haxion Brood give chase. The crawl fades up into the starlit night sky, and we pan down through noxious clouds of pollution, past a sprawling, glimmering city, and deep, deep beneath the metropolis of Taris, to the knotted, twisted marsh junkyard below. We see the rusted hulk of an ancient star cruiser, buried in the muck. And then blaster bolts ring out, and a molten hole is torn through the hull of the ship. And through that explosion, through the flames, careens a heavily modified Lambda-class Imperial shuttle, the Dancing Girl. As this shuttle hurtles through the hole that it just punched through this ancient star cruiser, three more craft pursue close behind. They're a strange amalgamation of ships. One is a Y-wing fuselage with TIE solar panels. The second is a B-wing cockpit with X-wing S-foils protruding from its sides. And the third is an old ARC 170 with TIE interceptor wings. These are modified fighter ships of the Haxion Brood, and they pursue close behind the Dancing Girl. Inside the cockpit, a heavy-set Twi'lek mans the controls desperately. Viren, why don't you introduce your character, describe what you're doing as you race through this junkyard.
Viren Tokema is a very heavy set, primarily blue-hued, but with a sort of tint of violet, particularly at the edge of his liku, which are very thick. Always one hanging in the front and one hanging in the back. And he piloting this heavily modified Lambda, which is most noticeable by its clipped tail wing. While behind the controls of this ship, he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows where every switch, every button, every trigger, even the loose control panels, as the one that slips loose as we careen through this hole without even looking, just reaching over and grabbing this panel and popping it back into place. Inside the cockpit of this ship is where Viren is most at home. And as I move through this pilot through this hole, move this control panel back into place, I just sort of over my shoulder.
Last I looked, there were 4 of us in the ship, and there are laser guns in more than one place on this thing. Yet I'm the only one with a finger on the trigger.
Who responds to his call for help?
Yes, there are plenty of guns on the ship, but there's also plenty of guns in the ship. Can we please take the fight to them? And Ayla looks to IG-66X. I'm sure there's more than just me who wants to get in on the action.
Yes. I'm not being paid to fire the guns on the ship. I'm being paid to fire the guns when we get off the ship.
Oh, hold your horses. Let's be honest, none of us are getting paid.
Fair point. And IG66X, who usually just goes by X, will stand up and Jake, where do you think probably the largest cannon would be?
The one that's going to be the most effective is going to be the tail gun.
Okay. So
They're
then
behind us, so you might want to get into that control back there. Right back there.
and X.
This dude's straight up inside a Lambda. He rented one for the game.
Which is amazing. The deposit is worth it.
Rented one. I
He
own.
crafted it on mini terrain domain.
I built it in my backyard.
Tutorial coming.
This is all EVA foam. I don't know if you guys know.
So X would go and quickly walk, the different portions of his head sort of spinning as he surveys the different places, and then spinning his head around to look at everyone else while using some of his other lenses to look out. He would begin to essentially target the closest craft and just start firing away.
Great. As you do that, Rosh, what are you up to?
He's like underneath one of the panels, which is like from like the intense stress that the ship has gone through. And he's got like a screwdriver in one hand, and he's like not even looking and like typing up over in this direction to like try and cool down some of the things that are overheating. He like shouts out, "Warren, there are some unacceptable variances in the sonic proton field. No sudden stops." He says, and he's like trying to fix all these things at once.
All of those variances are in exactly the tolerances I want them to be, and they better be there when we land.
So, X, you go and sit in the tail gun. You sink into this seat. It's a double-barreled laser cannon that faces back and can be rotated sort of in a wide arc behind the craft. You do indeed, as you hurtle through this junkyard, slipping in and out of rusted hulks of ships, you see these uglies, the Haxion fighters, sort of sweeping. All of them are kind of like trailing smoke, like they're just barely holding together. And as they close in on you, the ARC 170 variant sort of comes up alongside, and you see it just as you're sitting down in the seat. It sort of slips out of your field of view as it comes up on the starboard side of the ship. As this happens, Viren, you kind of look out the cockpit and you see it sort of matching pace with you right alongside you, and the cockpit opens up, and one of these Haxion commandos sort of stands up in the cockpit and has a some sort of launcher on his shoulder. I'm going to need a pilot check from you, please.
Okay.
So you roll as many dice as you have in that skill, and one of those dice must be easily distinguishable from the other ones. This is your destiny die.
And to be clear, so Matt, when you say that skill, because this is something that I confused in Jeff's Dragon Ball game, it's the total of the ability and the skill combined.
Yeah.
Correct?
So whenever, it's
So
Yep.
I have a 3D mechanical and a 1D pilot.
so 4 total.
So 4D.
So you'd roll 4.
Yeah,
total.
exactly. Yep.
And because this is my first ever D6 roll, I've got 3 blues and a red, correct?
Correct. Yep.
All right.
You're good to go.
That's going to be a total of 13.
So you bank hard to port, trying to avoid this, whatever this commando has mounted. But as you do so, you see that he fires it. And a harpoon with a tow cable on it. You hear it clank onto the side of the ship. You can hear it connect, and then you feel this jerking motion as the ship is jerked hard and towards this ARC 170 fighter. X, you are going to take a shot at the closest fighter. That would be the Y-wing fuselage with the TIE solar panels. It's coming up, and you see its blaster cannons glowing hot as it takes a few shots. So, if you would, give me a gunnery check.
Okay. So that would be...
It'll be under mechanical.
Yeah, under the mechanical there. So let's do... I only have one of that, so 3. There we go, baby.
I like the sound of that.
Also a 13.
So you get a clipping shot on one of the TIE panels. You see a hunk of slag kind of fly off of it, and the ship sort of veers a little bit, but maintains its course and soon corrects itself and continues firing at the ship. As this is happening, you see the tow cable that is now connected to the dancing girl. You see commandos getting out of the ARC 170 and sort of zip lining across the tow cable, and you can hear on the hull as commandos connect with the exterior of the ship.
Can you try and give us some more juice so that we can like zoom ahead and like maybe fling their ship some way? Since the time
Yeah,
was?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and give me a vehicles check?
Okay. Okay, it's good, but it's a 1 on the force die, so it's not
Okay.
great. It's a 16 and a 1 on the force die.
16. So you managed to pump some more juice into the engines, but in doing so, you have disabled the front shields on the ship. You had to take power from somewhere.
Yep.
So do you let Viren know?
No, he'll be very angry. So I'll just keep that to myself, I think.
Yeah.
But we should be able to at least go faster and maybe fling them, or if we catch them on like something, we could like bounce the rope or something. Viren's the pilot; he'll know.
So, Viren, you hear, you feel a kick in the thrusters a little bit, and as you look down at the HUD on the dashboard, you see that you have significantly more power in the engines right now, a lot more torque. So you can attempt to basically wrench the dancing girl free from this tow cable, and you will get an extra die on that roll due to the help from Rosh.
So is that another pilot check?
Yes. Go ahead and give me another pilot check with an extra die.
All right. I don't know what you did, but I think I like it.
Uh-oh. Okay, so there is a 15-16, but a 1 on the special die.
16, but a 1 on the special die. So you punch the engines, sort of veer off to the side, and you can feel the weight of the ARC 170 basically being wrenched up on the end of this tow cable, and then you feel the tow cable snap off. You are now in a dive out of control, but you have managed to free the dancing girl from this other fighter. And you actually hear as the ARC 170 runs into a piece of debris over your heads. Ayla, behind you, I imagine you're sitting in the cockpit. Behind you, you hear arc welders cutting through the hull on the ship, and if you turn around, you can see flashing light as it cuts through the side of the Lambda. What would you like to do?
That is my music. Ayla turns around, her cybernetic Leku opposite the standard or organic purple one, as you see the robotics intricately intertwine themselves into her left eye. You see her heads-up display, glowing green schematics leading her down the passageway of the Lambda shuttle to the spot where people are cutting through. She tightens her wrist braces and pulls out 2 daggers, one from each, and prepares for whatever comes through.
You see that there is indeed an arc welder being used to cut a sizable hole in the side of the ship. There are sparks sort of flying into the ship. I imagine, Rosh, you maybe get a there's a hull breach on your little sensors there.
He one of his face tentacles, one of the 4 that he has, will reach out for another screwdriver and begin tightening something with that as he in every direction is trying to fix things.
The whole thing is just falling apart.
Right.
And the hole that's being cut, the arc welder stops, and then
Right when it,
that piece of the hull opens. Go for it.
right when it stops, can I try to kick it outward?
Yeah, you absolutely
That's what
can.
I
Why don't you go ahead and just give me just a straight up either melee or strength check, athletics check, whichever's higher for you.
Okay, I like that. I'll give you a melee check. Okay. So remind the viewers exactly how this works.
All right, so the symbol that looks like a nutsack is going back to
that joke is
L5R.
declining in value. as
It
fewer and
is.
fewer people
It is.
understand.
It is.
So,
They'll never know.
And is there a set target number? Yes, there is.
So you're looking for 15 or better right now on your roll.
Awesome. Well,
So you add everything up, and everything
Yep, 12.
contributes, and the you got 12.
Yep. And
Okay,
the force
cool.
die is the one that was or the 6.
Okay, cool. Oh, the Destiny die is a 6?
Destiny die. No. I was just repeating a rule.
Gotcha. Yeah,
That's
1 or a
what
6. It always adds to the roll, but then additional things happen if it's a 1 or a 6. So you go up and you make to sort of kick the door, but before you can, the door sort of flies open and knocks you off your feet. You go sprawling, and through the hole, this massive bipedal droid, you can tell that it's just patched together from other pieces of droids. There's the body of it is maybe a gonk droid, but then it has these long sort of spindly arms that end in these gigantic fists. And it sort of comes through the hole and has to stoop to get in. And it goes, sort of puts its fist together and looks for something to fight, spying you sort of sprawled out on the ground. Go ahead.
You're big. And then she's just going to throw the dagger she has in her hands. And I imagine that she's going to be moving, rolling and ducking and rolling and sliding between it because it's pretty big and lumbering. So she's going to try to stay close to it, though, while throwing her daggers at it.
Yeah, go ahead and give me a throw check.
$24.
Damn. Yep, that'll do it.
Cool. 13, 14, 15 damage.
15 damage. Let me check this guy's soak
You see
really
these,
quick.
Glowing, almost like a white hot blue daggers just zip as fast as blaster bolts at this thing.
Soak is 8. And you got how much damage? I'm sorry, say one more time.
I have to recount 5, 9.
It was 15.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Jake.
So, soak of 8, 7 damage total, which will deal a wound to this big boy. So let me mark that. Go ahead and describe what that looks like as one of your... Oh, you ignore armor with your grab knives.
I do. With my grab daggers.
So...
Which you can get access to at the Patreon.
On the Matt Click Patreon. I statted them up. This is paid DLC content. This guy's pay to win on the Star Wars game. So actually his soak is significantly less, and he will take 2 wounds from that.
That looks like the 2 daggers sticking in the knee joints of the droid and just sparking.
Yeah, these knives are basically, they have mini repulsors on them, so when they're thrown, they have this burst of speed that allows them to go through armor. So there's actually a spray of circuitry and sparks as the knife passes clean through this droid. You even see some oil sort of spurt out, and the droid is actually staggered, sort of back against the bulkhead. But through the smoke of this puncture in the side of the hull, you can see that there are multiple other shapes outside the ship just waiting to get in. On the rear of the ship, X, you are manning that cannon. That Y-wing is closing in, taking shots at the dancing girl, and it's a partner, that B-wing with the X-wing S-foils sort of spinning, coming around, and you get a little put, target lock as it prepares to fire some concussion missiles. What would you like to do?
So this is probably very unorthodox. Is there any sort of portholes or any sort of... well, let me ask you this. Would blaster fire hurt a ship?
So blaster fire on a ship is basically halved. Actually, it's it's more than halved, because there's a damage scale: people, speeders, starships, and then structures. So you would have to do a shit ton of damage in order to get through the shields and the armor of a ship.
Gotcha. Because the probability of me hitting them with these guns, because I'm not very good with big guns, I'm better with small ones, is so low that I think I'd actually have a better chance hitting them with my blaster and taking less damage. Like, or, you know, essentially, like, I'm trying to think of what X would do. Because how likely is it that they'll destroy the ship?
With concussion missiles, the shields on the aft are still active, so the concussion missiles would have to punch through the shields. But after that, it wouldn't. I mean, the ship is not super durable. It's not designed for heavy combat.
So what I would do is I'd run some calculations and I would look at the two ships. I would look at their armory. I would see the concussion missiles sort of loading up, and rather than keep blasting away, my heads would spin. And so with two arms on the blaster controls, instead you see I sort of turn and I immediately have a blaster out and I just fire like 38 times on this thing's face standing in the room, because in my head the calculation is, if I can destroy this thing, then we can all focus on getting away.
Right.
And we can probably take one hit rather than me, who is inept at this gun. I'm going to destroy the thing that's right here, and then we can all work together.
Great. Okay, cool. Give me a blasters check then.
All right. I have a ton of that.
My skill is a lot.
It's at least 12. No, I'm kidding.
That's not unheard. I remember in the original, like, first edition West End games, they had stats for Darth Vader. You rolled like 28D in lightsaber. It was ridiculous. It was like, yeah, that's about right.
So, had I known what I was going to do, I would have pre-rolled this.
It's all good.
$26.
Yeah, that definitely hits. Go ahead and roll damage.
All right, here we go. Ooh, yeah. 14
damage. This thing has soak 8, so 7. So another wound. So Ayla, you're sort of in the hold of this ship. You just thrown a grab knife through this thing, and then blaster fire erupts from down the corridor towards the rear of the ship, and this blaster fire just sprays this droid, and you see it, the innards sort of pouring out. It starts to tilt over, still standing, but just barely. All right, let's go ahead.
Are there dudes on the side of the ship still?
There are, yeah. And Ayla, sort of where she is, she can see that there are guys sort of on the outside of the ship that are preparing to come in.
Can I try and reroute the power from all the other shields onto the side that they are to try and fling them off?
Oh.
Like if we maximize the shields on that side so they go vroom, like would they get repelled maybe?
Yeah, I would say that because they're using Magnalock boots, so they're basically magnetized to the ship. But I imagine that the shields, like the ion of the shields, would like disrupt the magnetic fields of the Magnalock boots and potentially hurl them off. So,
Try it.
yeah, go for it.
Let's just hope they don't come from the other sides. It's going to be 11, 7, 18.
18. You very quickly swap the remaining shields, taking from the aft and starboard sides, bring them over to port. The shields are maxed over there, and you hear as the maglock boots sort of let go. And I imagine, Viren, you can see in the cockpit as you're sort of like careening through the debris and stuff, you just see like 3 little shapes sort of disappearing into the greater junkyard as you hurtle past. And you just hear this like, ah! Like Wilhelm scream as they fall.
I imagine there's this like in the old X-Wing versus TIE Fighter game, on my displays there's the shield indicators, and the front shields have already disappeared, and I'm over there going dook, dook, dook. And then all of a sudden all shields just go bright on the port side.
Yeah.
I don't know what is going on here. All of you are crawling around in my ship like Minox. And I'm hearing sounds from down there I don't like. I'm hearing sounds back here I don't like. Who's shooting in my ship?
We're all hearing sounds from up there we don't like, Ayla says back.
And I imagine at that moment a stray blaster bolt from X sort of splashes against the dashboard as he's firing down the corridor.
It knocks that one panel loose again.
Oh, yeah.
I dodge and I just reach over and move the panel back where it was.
And I think
there's like a dozen klaxons going off right now in the ship cockpit.
That's normal. That's normal. It's going to make that sound.
they're set the way I like. No, I would say to Rosh, there's a funny story I'd like to tell you. There are no shields in the back. And I see them loading up another set of concussion missiles as you've literally taken all of the shields and put them over there. Now, remember my plan that I thought, we've got one good soak.
So
we don't.
With X saying this, I would like to take control of the rear turret from the cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming, literally saying out loud, I hope there's at least some power left for this. And I'm
working on it.
Going to drive. I'm going to continue to fly forward while with one eye, I'm watching the scope for the back for the targeting computer and just trying to line this shot up and take a shot at this Y-wing TIE hybrid.
Yeah, go for it.
That's amazing.
So what am I rolling here?
So that'll be a gunnery check. And it'll actually be -1D since you're also still trying to pilot through this like very intricate sort of cavernous junkyard.
Okay, so normally that would be 3, so that's going to be 2. Oh boy. It's an 8 with a. It only matters if it's a 1 or a 6. You said on the
correct.
Destiny die. All right, it's an 8.
So you take the controls, take a few shots, but the that Y-wing fuselage sort of very quickly sweeps out of the way. It comes back into its firing arc, settling there, and you see this glow from its wingtips as it prepares to fire off these concussion missiles.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
They're coming towards the dancing girl. I'm going to say in this instance there's maybe something Rosh could do, definitely something Viren could try. What do you guys want to do to try to avoid these concussion missiles?
I have a question. Are they in any way tracking or homing missiles?
So they just hone in on the heat from the engines. That's all. They're like very close range explosives.
Okay. If I cut all the power to the ship for like a moment, would they go past us?
Yeah.
I'm going to do that.
Okay.
The funny thing is, I was going to do the same thing.
Okay, but this way you get to be angry at me about it, so it works out better, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, what does that look like? I can't get the image out of my head that it's literally just a giant power plug that you just
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So he's got like, these 4 tentacles on his face, and like they're all trying to like stop things from like leaking, and then he just like has a moment where he like closes his eyes and like lets all the screwdrivers drop and just like reaches over underneath the console he's under and just like hits this like do not ever touch ever button.
It literally is written in Arabic.
Yeah.
Do not
And he
touch
just-
ever.
And he just like looks up to the sky and says, "Forgive me."
There's this sinking sensation for a moment, and then all of you feel that free fall sensation. Ayla, in the hold, you feel yourself floating a little bit. The droid sort of does the same thing. You feel yourself lifting out of your seat, the harness pressing against your body, Viren, and then the concussion missiles miss by a couple feet, flying forward, and they strike a hull in front of you. This massive explosion. I'm going to need a piloting check from you, Viren, as you try and glide to safety.
While you're picking up those dice, in the moment that the power's off and we're kind of floating in here, I would love to acrobatically bounce off the wall and just push this thing out of the Lambda cruiser.
Please
through
do.
the hole it came in.
Please do.
All right. We love to celebrate when things go horribly wrong, right?
Yeah, that sounds like us.
So I rolled 4d6, and I have a total of 7.
Okay. So, you...
In my defense, this stick is dead.
Yeah. You're
Well, do we
basically
have-
just trying to glide the ship. Go ahead, Tim.
I was going to ask if we have, I don't know, Jake, if when you made your character, if you saved any character dice.
You know
Oh,
what? I
Should
do
a
have
force point too.
I did.
Yeah, everyone has a
specifically.
force point, which is good for double dice. So if you
So-
want to,
oh.
you can use that.
Just wanted to throw that out there since you're new
so-
to the system.
So what does that mean? The force
Thank you,
point.
Tim.
So
dice.
everyone starts with 1 force point, and if you spend it, you double the dice on a single roll. In this case, you would basically just get to roll another 4 dice and add them to...
Okay. Okay. Yes, I would like to do this. This seems like a good point that the force would come into play.
May the force be with us.
Okay, that looks a lot better. A lot better.
This is the way.
It
So
doesn't matter for me. I got the extra life from Matt's Patreon, so
right.
Be fine.
I
He's
bought
got a
the
lot.
save
He's got the
point.
cool cosmetic unicorn armor. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there was a 7. There is now a 21 total.
There you go. Now that sounds better.
So
So,
it looks really bad at first. I imagine flying over this junkyard that we're starting to knock against some of the pieces of the junk that are jutting up,
yep.
and just as we're about to come in, just kind of like pulling through the upright a couple of upright nose pieces of a couple of starships, and if it wasn't for that clipped top wing of the ship, and I just rotate it sideways, and we scrape, there are sparks everywhere. I meant to do that.
Yeah, you just hear this as you sort of scrape through, and all you can see is fire as you fly through the explosion that these concussion missiles caused. Behind you, the debris of the ships comes cascading down, and you hear as the 2 Haxion Brood fighters crash into this newly created avalanche of debris. Your sensors are dead, your shields are dead, the engines are dead, but you're safe. You're alive. Ayla, what'd you get on your roll to try and kick that droid out?
Yeah, so Ayla pulls the daggers out. She grabs the bulkhead above where they're kind of floating in this space. She puts her back to the ceiling of the Lambda, propels herself forward in a swing off of the ceiling, colliding with this droid with her legs, and propels it out with a 16, maybe.
Yep, that does it. this droid just and goes out of the hole, and you just see it disappear into the wreckage of this junkyard.
Her legs kind of flail out for a second, and it looks like she needs help getting back in the ship. Like she's still hanging on, like she might go any moment now.
Rosh, I assume you plug this baby back in.
Right, he like wipes some sweat off his brow with like one of his tentacles, and then like begins to like, he turns it back on and have to like flip this like series of switches, but he's able to do like 3 at a time, like using his tentacles, and then like turns a final key or whatever and tries to get it going again.
Yeah, there's like you're sort of gliding towards the surface of Taris, Viren, and you just hear just the wind whistling past. There's no engines. There's nothing. Just and then you hear and the engines kick on again, and you're able to pull up out of the steep dive just as you're about to hit the ground. IG, you're in the turret. You saw the explosion flying through. You saw the ugly fighters hit that wall of debris and explode. Seemingly you are now safe from danger, though you can see behind you that your comrade Ayla is basically hanging out of the ship at this point.
And I would calmly, in that IG mechanical sort of snapping, like just walk over and turning, sort of surveying the rest, seeing Rosh as he's sort of wiping the sweat. You know, he now has this sort of like little welder, and he's like, and I see Viren just cursing at the dash and like hitting different lights, and there's a klaxon bell that's like going on and off and things like that. And I just sort of reach down to Ayla and just pull her up as I turn and walk somewhere else. Very sort of like,
Ayla gathers herself. She sees the flickering heads-up display, the symbol of that Titan droid that was just kicked out of the ship, just flicker off and disappear as she's rescued by IG. She says, "Thank you," and you're gone.
Viren, you have the coordinates that URZO the Hutt gave you, and you are nearing them now. And there are no other ships on your sensors that you can see.
I'll bring the ship around in a wide arc just to get a quick scan around, make sure nothing's coming, a visual scan, and then bring it in with that firing off the retros and the repulsors to bring it in for landing.
Yeah, as you bring the dancing girl around, you can actually see like this column of smoke rising from some sort of wreckage, something that crashed into the junkyard of Taris. You bring the Lambda around, the wings fold up, and you set it down. It has a hole in the side, but otherwise is no worse for wear.
There's a moment the one wing on the port side doesn't raise. It stops 3/4 of the way, and then I have to lower it and bring it back up again. That's normal. It does that.
You set her down, and the ramp drops. And you see that column of smoke rising from some wreckage just a few yards away. Parker's over here taking shots. What the hell's going on?
Of goldfish crackers. So good.
That's even better. That's
wait till
even
after the
better.
break when he busts out the Capri Sun.
Yeah. Oh man.
Like it's a middle school basketball game.
Pacific Cooler. Yeah, baby.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have a squeeze it.
We're gonna go to CC's Pizza after for trophies.
Dude, oh, that sounds amazing right now. I would really go for some CC's Pizza.
Can I get my incredibly small bag of Cheetos? Please.
Like way too small for any sort of hunger. Like any, yeah.
My mom only gave me an orange.
Yep.
Oh,
That's
man.
all Star Wars.
So let's actually, I think this might be a good place to take a quick break and allow everyone to introduce their characters now that we're past the first action sequence, the in media res opening. So let's go around clockwise here. Start with Rosh. Go ahead and introduce yourself, your character, and anything you want to plug.
Hello, I'm Lloyd. I run JarlDM on YouTube. I'm playing Rosh Vadik, who is a Quarren slicer / engineer / charlatan, willing to take lots of risks with somebody else's property, I guess is the main thing. Yeah, so excited. That was such a cool opening, and I can't wait to break Jake's ship again.
Awesome. All right, Barker, go ahead, man.
Yeah, same story. Ayla is looking to use all of Vern's stuff and money. She looks up to him quite a bit. She's a Twi'lek scout, but she's impoverished, I would say, but it's her own doing. She's always on the lookout for more credits, and always coming up with excuses why Vern should loan them to her.
All right, Tim, go ahead.
I am IG66X. As we know, the IG series of droids, there are a few different people that tried manufacturing them. One set of droids didn't do so bad, and the other set slaughtered their creators immediately and escaped to roam the galaxy. I'm not sure which one I am. And I'm not exactly sure why there's an X at the end of my name, but I'm definitely familiar with this group, and it's not family, but it's in a strange place, those acquaintances that are better than strangers. I'm part of Absolute Tabletop, and I'm also part of the YouTube channel Tabletop Terrors.
All right, and last but certainly not least, Jake.
I am Jake from Mini Terrain Domain. I run the YouTube channel and the Twitch channels, Mini Terrain Domain, where I do a little bit of dungeon terrain crafting, miniature painting, product reviews, that sort of thing. And then over on Twitch, I run D&D 4 to 6 times a week in numerous campaigns at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, just about every time that we run. And I am playing Viren Chokima, a corpulent Twi'lek pilot who is very skilled in what he does behind the stick of a ship. We'll see how he does on the ground, on the surface. And he has taken on the burden of supporting Ayla. At least a portion of every job he does is specifically to be able to make sure that Ayla doesn't end up in a dead, basically. And Rosh is probably the only individual that I trust to get under the controls of the ship, but he's also the one who takes the most heat for everything that he does. And honestly, I'm a little too scared to say anything too negative to IG66. Assassin droids kind of creep me out.
All right, awesome. And just a couple quick things. This overlay, this sick-ass overlay that we're all using was made by Lloyd over there. There's a link in the description to go to his Fiverr page where you can get really awesome overlays and splash screens made for a criminal rate. It's highway robbery how cheap they are. Definitely go check it out. And the rules that we are using, HyperspaceD6, were written by myself with some extra super special help from Michael Barker there. The rules are in the description as well, so definitely check them out. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back for some more bounty hunting action. Please stick around. All right, welcome back to Star Wars Quarry, brought to you by the Ninja Air Fryer, now available on Amazon. Okay, so you land in the midst of this junkyard, and you can see the wreckage just a few yards away, this column of smoke rising up. There's like a big divot in the ground where this ship has crashed, like recently. You see it there in the distance. What y'all want to do?
Rush will be trying to like put out the literal and figurative fires that he started before like Varin gets to look around and see all the damage he's done. He's going to try and fix as many things as possible and at least like put, you know, band-aids over some of the worst things, so it looks like it's all going to keep together. So he's less concerned about happening outside the ship and more about the fact that we have like a hole in the ship and that we like hard like rebooted the ship in the middle of flying and stuff like that. Yeah.
You'd hear a very heavy sigh in the protesting of the pilot's chair as I heave my considerable bulk out of there. But I take a step out of the cockpit, stop, turn around to Rush underneath the console.
Don't think I don't know what you did. We'll talk about that later. Just put it all back.
I think what I did is save all of our lives, but I guess I won't do it next time. He's like muttering to himself as he's like trying to fix this stuff.
And then I turn around and unleash just a slew of curses in every language that I know at the giant hole in the side of the ship.
Yeah, and you see there's like smoldering bits of like droid, including like a piece of plating that has the distinctive sort of goldenrod yellow that all of the Haxion Brood display on their armor, and there's like oil stains and stuff on the plating.
I'm keeping that piece of Haxion steel. That's gonna get that's gonna go in, be used in the repair of the ship.
Yeah, good call.
Is there a full-size droid that died inside our ship? Or were they all kicked
No, Ayla kicked it off the ship.
Okay.
It's probably a couple clicks back.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's also got a couple holes in it.
You, by the way, Ayla, you see that the knife that you threw through the droid is sort of stuck in one of the bulkhead like support pylons on the side of the ship. It's just sitting there vibrating.
I tried to pull it out to hand it to her, but I can't get it out. And I just point to it. Please don't leave that there.
Of course, it wouldn't. It would cost you. Ayla looks to X. Do you mind?
So I would, without looking at it, you know, sort of just, I would pull that dagger out and, like, rather than keep it, X gonna give it to you.
But you get one.
Thank you.
That's your one. You get one.
Thank you for the delivery.
And then I would probably walk out of the hole.
You just step out of this big,
Yeah, just like
rough hewn hole. Yeah, instead of going off the boarding ramp. It's the most efficient way to get out of the ship. Yeah.
Just and sort of look around, just walking fearlessly, just because, you know, I'm used to getting shot and things like that. I can be repaired. So not walking as someone who would die from blaster fire, but someone who would probably just be inconvenienced. Sort of just walking, looking around. But I do have both blasters out, sort of.
Yeah, and as you step onto the ground, you immediately sink a little bit, and you see that there's marshland just as far as the eye can see, with these ships just sort of sunk into the swamp. So not only is this a junkyard, but it's a junkyard that is mud, just this like sucking, vacuous mud as you're sort of like treading towards this downed ship.
Awesome.
How's the terrain? Would you like company? She's no stranger to walking alongside IG to scout ahead for the group.
Yeah, and I feel like it's less of a question and you like just say it so that I know you're right there and kind of have my, my six essentially. So I probably even break into a formation a little bit knowing that you're there, and maybe you usually cut right and I usually cut left or something. Like we kind of just do the sweep that we typically do, looking for any low-hanging pieces that we can salvage and sell, anything that might just be laying there. And so, yeah.
I guess I'll move down into the area where the hole in the ship is, and then realize that there's a hole in the ship, and begin to try and fix it. I don't know if I'll call after them to bring scrap metal this much. He stretches out roughly the size of the hole.
I'm already out near the ship, not moving too far away from it, but looking at what scrap there is, looking for what would be hull quality, something that we could cut off of another hull, something that's going to be thick enough and be able to be cut to fit.
Cool. So, Rosh, you're staying behind, going to be patching up this hole. The rest of you are heading out. Okay. You stride through the mud and soon come upon the wreckage at the coordinates that were given to you by URZO. You see a strange-looking ship. It's sort of long and skinny, this sort of very simple rectangular fuselage with one wing with a blaster cannon bent at an on angle coming off one side. I imagine, Viren, you'd probably be a little bit more familiar with different ships than the others. You would probably instantly recognize it as a Mandal Motors Pursuer class enforcer ship. They saw a lot of use during the Clone Wars, but are fairly rare these days. This one, unfortunately, looks pretty totaled. It's hit. You can kind of see if you look up that it hit several layers of Junkyard before coming to rest here in the mud. There are flames smoldering, and as you get closer, you can see extensive carbon scoring from blaster fire on the outside of the ship.
And I think I would, it's totaled, but can I see any sort of pieces that seem to be the most approachable, the most intact? You know what I mean? Is there anything that's kind of catching my eye in the wreckage in terms of where to start?
Yeah, you can see, though the main fuselage is sort of sunk into the mud from crashing here, you can see that there is an airlock on the top portion of the ship, a sort of spherical hatch sitting near the aft section of the ship.
Gotcha. What I would do is I would go in that direction, but still being very careful. And I would, if Ayla didn't quite see it yet, I would sort of nod, into that direction and just approaching it carefully, but seeing that that's probably where we're going to get pay dirt.
I'm checking out the ship and already trying to figure out and determine if it's feasible to get the shield generator off of this thing.
You can
These things
certainly
have a military grade shield generator, so I mean, it may not be feasible, but that's how Viren's mind works. He's like, "Ooh, what can I get off of this?" You can either sell it or get Rosh to incorporate it into the ship.
Yeah, if you manage to get inside, you can run a diagnostic on the ship and see exactly what's still functioning. It's hard to tell from outside of it. It's like a fairly featureless ship. There's not a lot to it on the outside.
If you like radio and tell me you found something, I can use my like actual knowledge as opposed to your guesswork to like see if it's worth anything. And he would say as much.
That makes sense. I know what you did there, but that makes sense.
Let's not involve Rush until we figure out what's here. Ayla's moving towards you said there was the spherical hatch, like that was the hatch to go inside?
Yeah, there's like an airlock. You know that there's probably a boarding ramp underneath that would be the main entrance, but that is under the mud, so you'll have to go through the sort of emergency hatch on top of on the ship.
Do I see anything? Has it been manipulated? Has it been opened? Has it...
No, it's sealed shut. It looks like you're probably the first ones to come upon this wreckage. URZO has spies all over Taris, and he was pretty insistent that you get there as quickly as possible. And in fact, the only reason why you even nabbed this job from him is because you happened to be on the right side of the planet at the right time. But clearly, the Brood is also aware of this because they ran into you on their way to it. So you imagine you don't have much time before others show up.
Ayla looks to the others, pulls a stun grenade casually off of her hip, and kicks the door. Haxion cops, open your mouth, and we don't open fire.
Nothing.
No answer?
Nothing.
Don't blow anything up. He says he's like squelching through the mud, like running after it, like, don't break anything.
You've got that like anime arms as you're running towards them, trying to get them to stop. Yeah.
I'm just going to assume my cybernetic eye doesn't have infrared. That would be stupid, or some sort of, but she's going to open the hatch.
You try to. It is sealed shut.
No, I said she's going to. I said she does that.
She does it. It happens.
Did you get that DLC too?
I created it in a fiction.
Dang it. She looks over to X. Would you open this jar of milk for me? Jar of, I meant to say blue milk, but it was like, all right, whatever. It comes in jars.
It comes in jars. Yep.
It's just called milk in the Star Wars universe. They don't
I should have said jar of space pickles.
There you go. Yeah, space pickles.
That's it. And I think there's definitely a weird, funny story about a jar of milk. And so, like, so that's actually a thing where there was some sort of jar of milk and whatever that is. So, that's a story for another time. But Matt, is there any way with the tools we have, with what we're, what's surrounding us, that we can get into this ship? If that part's sealed, you said it's mostly totaled. So are there any parts that we can kind of claw through, gut through? How do we get into this thing?
So you imagine that the hatch is probably the most accessible point. The armor of this ship it's military grade, like Viren was saying. So the plating is pretty thick. You imagine that with explosives or with some careful slicing by Rosh, you could likely get inside the hatch. You can see that the hatch itself has one of those like Star Wars style locks, the one that droids interface with, where they like stick their little proboscis in and turn it and stuff. That's sort of at the center of this hatch for accessing it from the outside.
Perfect. And so I think I would look down and I would look back to Ayla and I'd say, I don't think this jar of milk is going to be opened easily. And then I'd look over to Rosh and I'd say, unless you have a jar opener. And I would probably shoot the hull at a very specific angle, just so that the blaster would sort of like deflect, to show him that we're not going to blow through this thing. And maybe even the bolt sort of like past Viren's head, just again, like another one. But I would definitely look at Rosh like, we need you to open this. And I would tap that droid port with my blaster.
He'll like climb up out of the muck, I guess, and then like crack his knuckles and squat down in front of it and see what he can do, if anything. I'd like to try and slice it. I don't know if that's a possibility.
Yeah, this will be a computer's check for you.
$1 million dice.
1 million dice.
Mm. 20.
You do so fairly easily. Go ahead and describe what it looks like.
He pulls out like a he has like a all this slicer gear. So he pulls out, I guess it's like, you know the way chefs have those like roll out like knife. He pulls out one of those and like rolls it out, and he's like looking for the correct tool. He pulls one out and like puts it into the thing. It's not quite correct, so he puts it back, pulls out another one, and eventually he finds it, and then he like places his ear next to the hull, and he's like, "Oren, stop breathing so loudly." And then there's like a click, cling, and he like puts it back and steps back.
The hatch, there's sort of this gust of air as any oxygen trapped inside is released. The seal on the hatch is broken.
Now, will you open this jar of milk for me?
Certainly. And I would, and is it easy to open, or is it going to take some sort of doing?
Nope, you just lift it up, opens up on a big hinge, creaks open, and you can see it's dark inside. There's a short ladder leading down into the bowels of the ship.
So I certainly lift it with one hand, using my blaster to, cover all of us at this point. And then I'd look to Ayla and I'd say, well, the jar of milk is open. Now you'd better drink it. Essentially saying, you're going first.
Scavenge protocol. Let's be careful and not break anything, he'll say for the 10th time.
Listen, Ayla likes to joke, but she knows how valuable this stuff is, and that if anything gets destroyed or even the least bit damaged, we don't get paid. And if we don't get paid, then she doesn't get to force more credits out of Viren somehow. So she is going to head over to the hatch, and she is with the stun grenade in hand. She is going to drop in through.
You hit the plating and it echoes through the ship. It's dark inside. There's almost like a fog in here from all of this smoke that has just settled. It has no place to vent, so there's just this sort of haze inside the ship. You can see there's extensive damage inside too. Some of the laser fire managed to find its way inside clearly. You can see behind you there is a cargo hold with a sealed door, and in front of you there's a short hallway leading into the cockpit of the craft. You can see two chairs, one in front of the other, inside the cockpit, and you see a figure slumped in one of the chairs.
X, I have another jar down here for you. And she moves towards the cockpit.
I was going to say, without hesitation, he would use his spindly limbs to climb the ladder quickly, and then I would, continuing to look, pointing blasters any and everywhere, just sort of rotating, and essentially, how would you like to handle this?
She's kind of silently moving towards the cockpit, and she kind of nods behind you, and at the cargo hold, just in the aft section of the ship.
I'm sorry, Jake. Jacob.
I just saw that too.
So
I'll say.
So, if you're continuing to move in that direction, then I would follow, just continuing to like cover, essentially. And then if anything were to happen, I would blast first and absolutely ask questions later.
All right, so you two are heading towards.
Decision. Yep.
Yeah, you two are heading towards the cockpit. Rosh and Viren, are you two entering the ship or staying outside?
I'll go in once I don't hear shooting. In the first couple of seconds, I think it must be safe. So I'll go in and maybe I'll go in a different direction in case the joint.
Yeah, you move towards the cargo hold. You see a sealed door again with that circular lock on it. Probably similar to the one on the hatch. You'll have an easy time opening it. That clearly is the cargo hold, and the other direction is the cockpit where the other two are going. Viren, what about you?
Once Rosh goes in, I'm crouching down, looking into the hatch, calling after him. Don't let them blow apart any of the good stuff. And see if that shield generator, if it's something we can get. Anything that's salvageable, you know what to look for. I'm going to stay up here and keep an eye out for Haxion. And I'm going to stay up there and keep an eye out for Haxion.
Okay, great. So, computers check from you, Rosh. Viren, while you're outside, I'd actually like a... let's do just either a pilot, gunnery, or knowledge check.
Oh, let's do a pilot check, because I get 4D with that.
And while you two are doing that, Ayla and X, you two head towards the cockpit. Ayla, as you enter the cockpit, you see that the cockpit is actually sunk into the mud, and so there's no light coming from the canopy. It's completely dark, but you can see what little light there is coming from the porthole that you open, glinting off of the steel of a helmet on this figure, slumped forward in the seat. And as you come alongside, you see the distinct T visor of Mandalorian armor. The Mando is clearly dead because she has taken a laser blast through the chest from a starship. A bolt found its way through the hull and pierced through her torso, leaving this gaping, charred wound, blasting open the steel of her armor. She's slumped in the seat with her helmet at an odd angle.
Ayla pulls out one of her grav daggers, which the subtle glowing blue of which can help her examine the T-visor a little more. She clinks the dagger against the helmet. Is it made of Beskar or something else?
Not Beskar, but still nice armor.
Have you ever seen The Mandalorian, X? Or unless we clearly have, then I've obviously...
No, you likely have not.
No. Well, counting now, yes. Counting any others, no. And really counting now, almost. I still can't see it. And then I would begin, seeing the slumped figure, and then now, like Ayla, as you say, like this sort of glowing blue light almost looks like this mini, like Death Star trench run, as you're basically like, going through the creases and crevasses of the armor, and I'm just like basically looking for anything that's a weapon, any armor that will fit any of us. So like, as Rosh was talking about, like salvager code and basically like salvager protocol, I'm thinking of armorer and assassin code and assassin protocol of. And so, Matt, I want to know, will any of this armor fit anyone here? Are there any weapons? And is there anything that we can use on this corpse?
So, with a quick cursory glance, you determine that the armor is likely not usable. It's fitted distinctly for her, and the largest piece of the armor is completely destroyed. There's this huge, just gaping sort of exit wound through the front of this armor. The breastplate is just like peeled outwards. The helmet is in decent shape, though you doubt it would fit anybody. But it's good steel and would probably fetch a fair few credits in any market here on Taris. In terms of weaponry, the Mandalorian is carrying a DH-17 blaster pistol, which is just blaster pistol. It's on her hip. But she also has a vibro blade on her back.
I think I would take the vibro blade, and without looking, I would take the vibro blade and hand it to Ayla, like, that's yours. And then I would unceremoniously slide the helmet off. And I imagine I would stick it into a satchel. And I would call out to Rosh and Vurin, basically just saying... just basically saying, there's a dead Mandalorian down here and some good steel. I gave Ayla the vibroblade. Everything else, fresh pickings.
I was gazing at this Mandalorian, thinking about the question she asked X. Have you ever seen a Mandalorian? Knowing full well that nobody has, really, until now. What does this one look like?
She's human, or at least as near human as you can tell. She has fair skin and dark hair that is shorn close to her skull. You can see that there are fine scars visible all across her skull from various battle wounds and glancing blows that her helmet sustained the bulk of. You can see blood running from her nose and her mouth. Her eyes are open and she's staring lifelessly forward.
I expected her to be something more. She looks at the vibroblade. Thank you.
Oh, much welcome. I think... And then IG would sort of realize that it's not common to see a Mandalorian, but then think that that's stupid that people would care.
Jake, outside the ship, Viren, keeping an eye out for more of the Haxion Brood. You glance over the ship, taking note of the battle damage the ship sustained, the carbon scoring. You take a moment to look over this carbon scoring, and you recognize it. It's distinct. The firing pattern. Imperial TIE fighters attacked this ship. But the Empire's dead.
I think there's a moment where, as I'm sort of just doing a normal assessment, just kind of, figuring that maybe it was taken down by, literally anybody else would have crossed my mind. There's this moment where it just sort of clicks. And as I'm kind of running my hand along it, I stop. And immediately, I almost imagine that you see the ship from the side, then you just see Viren's head just go, and immediately is looking for Imperial ships. And then I pull out my comm link.
How's it going down there? We might want to not linger. It looks. You know what? Hold on. And I'm going to walk over to that hatch. And I don't want to even say it over the comm link. As I lean down inside the ship, and you hear this sort of echoey. It looks like Imperial TIE fighters took this thing down.
As he's saying this, Rosh, you break the seal on that cargo hold, and it the door opens up.
I've been told that it's Mandalorian, and so I will be doubly careful looking for tripwires and things like that, because I imagine if anyone, they have a reputation for it, like has booby-trapped their valuable cargo, it would be these people. And so he'll be like looking very carefully around before he steps into the hold.
Yeah, go ahead and give me a search check if you would, please.
Yes. Search is perception. 11.
At first you don't see anything, and then you step into the room, and as the smoke from the rest of the ship kind of wafts into this new space, filling it, you see this distinct sort of breaking of the smoke. You follow that line up, and you see that there is a laser tripwire leading down, and at the end of that laser tripwire is a blaster cannon sort of aimed down at the door.
Okay. If I can see the line of the wire, then I'll just try and move around it.
Yeah, you can
or
easily
under
avoid it.
Yeah.
You do so. You see in the hold, it's actually fairly empty in here. There's a few like Durasteel crates filled with rations and things like that. There's some a couple like blaster rifles hung up on the door. And then there's this sitting sort of inside the crash webbing. You almost pass by it, but then you see the optic sensors of a KX series security droid. Just the head sitting in the side of the cargo hold.
Yeah, I think he like freezes, and then like very slowly looks in that direction to make sure that it is just the head, and then we'll sort of determining that it's not going to shoot him, we'll like reach forward and take it.
Yeah, there's almost like this unsettling skull-like quality to this thing's face, but you lift it up, it's surprisingly heavy. You see that it's just the head of this security droid with sort of the neck and wires hanging down. It was clearly like ripped from the body of this security droid.
Do I know where a KX security droid's memory and stuff would be kept? Is it in the head?
It would be in the head, yep.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'll take that with me. I'll just do like another sweep around. I'll particularly check for like hidden, like I'm sure we have hidden smuggling compartments. So I'll like check for those, like go to certain places and like knock on the hole and stuff like that to see if there's anything hidden.
Yeah.
I'll leave.
Yeah, you do so. With your earlier search check, you manage to find there's like a hidden panel behind one of the plating on the bulkhead, and you reach behind it and you find a switch back there. And if you hit it, the wall slides open, and there's a compartment sort of cut into the side of the cargo hold, and you see hanging there is a Mandalorian jetpack.
Oh, dang. He'll like just quietly say to him, "Jackpot." And then we'll like sort of look in the... He's very nervous that this is also trapped, but his greed is greater than his self-preservation, so he's just gonna like he's got the droid head in one hand, he's gonna reach forward and try and like pull off the thing.
You grab it, not booby-trapped.
Excellent. Okay, so with that then, I'll try and make my way back and remember where I stepped under the tripwire and make my way out.
You do so, you emerge back into the main corridor. Ayla and X, what are you two doing while this is happening?
Play fighting with the vibro blade, testing some maneuvers, perhaps. She's examining it, spinning. She took a long glance at the Mandalorian, and but after thanking IG-66X, she, I don't know. She takes a glance at the cockpit to see if there's anything on, see any sensors or something that are still activated. If there's something that's still going on, she has a pretty good search with her cybernetic eye, but I don't know if there's anything to even search for.
Yeah, you can give me a search and just see if there's anything that sort of piques your interest.
14.
You see that the astrogation computer is still active. It's blinking dimly in the dim light of the cockpit. And if you access it, you can see the ship manifest, essentially, the itinerary of where it's been, where it was going, if you want to scroll through that.
She does. She scrolls through it.
You can see that this ship has seen a lot of action. There is decades of logs here, but in recent days, you can see that the ship spent some time in the Sullust system and sustained this damage before jumping to light speed and arriving here on Taris. So the damage that it took was not here in this system. It probably barely made it here.
It came out of light speed here. It kind of occurs to her that if that's the case, and this is freshly crashed, and it's Imperial fighters that shot it, that whatever's chasing it is going to come out of light speed and be really freaking scary. So all of a sudden, this terror overwhelms her, and she starts screaming, I think the Empire is coming. I think the Empire is coming. Vernon!
Is that not what I just said?
No use. In one way or another.
Rosh, your data pad connected to the computer systems of the dancing girl. Beep, 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 beep. And if you look at it, there is a large ship coming out of hyperspace in the system.
We have to go, and we have to go now. And he'll start running from, I guess, like where the cargo door is, like up the ladder again, and then out into the muck towards the ship, whether they're coming or not.
You do so.
Yeah, and
Did you get the helmet X?
I did. And so you would have probably seen him like put it in the bag, and then what I would probably do is sort of like, because you look rattled, more rattled than usual. And so I think I would sort of shepherd you toward the ladder, you know, because you're kind of like looking around, I think, you know, like you're saying, like, the Empire's coming, the Empire's coming. And I would probably say something like, the Empire's deader than this Mandalorian. And just taking one final sweep around for anything, medical supplies, rations, sort of the things that I know the others will probably need, and finding not much of anything. Unless you trump that, Dungeon Master. I essentially, excuse me, you know, present two hands to the ladder to Ayla. Like, please, you first.
She climbs out the ship.
I do as well, but I keep one gun in the darkness just as I do, and then I exit and sort of look around at everyone to see what we're going to do.
What is the likelihood that I would have on the dancing girl a magnetic hull repair kit?
It's a good question. I imagine that this is probably not the first time that holes have been punched in the side of the dancing girl. Why don't we...
I'm thinking they're probably something that's expensive and I don't like using them.
Mm-hmm. I imagine if you do have one, it's like the one that you have for emergencies.
Could we take like the like divider of the shower or something like that's metal and like peel that off and like slam it against it, like anything to just cover it.
Yeah,
If we
you
don't
can
have
do
a
a makeshift
magnetic-
repair. It probably won't get you into space, but it'll at least be
Yeah.
safe for Atmo. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to give me like a quick, like, I'd just do a vehicles check. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to do a quick patch job.
Because I imagine that after that calling down, Viren is sort of waddle running back to the ship and trying to figure out how to get this repaired so we can get the heck out of here.
Yeah, and as you get into the cockpit, Viren, and like sit down, you like pull up the sensors and you see that it is indeed an Imperial transponder signal. Specifically, an Imperial Raider class Corvette has just jumped into the system.
So I'm running through the startup sequences and while Rosh, are you attempting to do the repair then?
Yeah, I got a
So then-
17.
So then while you're doing that, then I'm leaning under the control panel as it's not in
Say, this one goes here.
and I'd swap out two of the things that you had put in place. Probably two of the controls that we're always arguing over.
Yeah, I got a 17 to like just take some bit of scrap metal from the ship, like I say, like a part of an inner wall or something.
Yeah.
Where we don't need it as much, and just like real quick, I guess like hot gluing it or like welding it or something.
Yeah, it's like
just, like,
it's the
everything.
Star Wars equivalent of hot glue and duct
Yeah.
tape. Like you just get it up there so nobody's flying out of the ship during a high speed
Yep.
maneuver. Yeah, and you do that really
You're
quick.
going to need this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This guy has a hot glue gun right there ready to go. I'm surprised it wasn't in a holster, like a clutch holster,
Yeah.
Jake. You're just like pulling out.
Who said it wasn't?
As these repairs are finishing up, Viren, you see on the sensors that there are smaller ships just entered the atmosphere and they're heading for your position.
I'm doing that thing, running around, flipping switches, looking up at Ross. You need to bolt that in place, and hollering out at X and Ayla. You need to get in here. We got to go.
Yeah, and
Run
X
past
would-
the control panel, and just kind of give it that sort of, and you can hear something else in the ship just suddenly start spinning up.
Yeah, and I think X would, knowing that we've had to run before, but this is probably the largest thing we've run from. I would secure anything that hasn't been secured, all of the things that don't require technical skill, but that are important in order to make a run for it. So like securing anything loose, putting things away in compartments, strapping things down and all that sort of thing. And once enough of that is done and the debris is cleared so that there's nothing dangerous in there, I would probably, slap down into the gun seat in the rear there.
Ayla jumps in, moves towards the cockpit, gives a quick make our dance, cousin, to Viren before jumping into another turret. There's another one, correct?
Yeah, there's guns in the front too, and there's a second seat there in the cockpit that you can man the guns from.
Okay, that's where I'll be.
Yeah, because there's dual, I believe it's dual lasers on each of the wing shoulders,
Yeah.
like on
Yep.
either side of the cockpit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then there's a little turret in the back, and then there's a little surprise gun for for personnel that Viren installed on the bottom of the ship. So you guys all clamber up into the Dancing Girl, do a quick pre-flight check, slap basically a metal shower curtain in the hole and hot glue it in place. And just as you get the engines going, the transponder picks up 6 Imperial TIE fighters coming towards your position. And in fact, in the silence before the engines start up, you hear as they approach from high atmo to your position. Viren, as you take off, I'm going to need a pilot check.
Oh, yeah. All right. I'm going to grab these 3 dice that are all sitting on 6s. I'll roll them, but I'm going to use them. Ooh, No lie. 3 of them, including the Destiny die, came up as 6s.
Awesome.
So that's a total of 20 with my 4 D for piloting with a 6 on the Destiny.
Beautiful. So you expertly lift off and maneuver this thing like it's an extension of your body, slipping it through holes in ships, careening through exhaust ports, and then as you come up through the cloud of noxious pollution and leave the lower junkyards of Taris, you know that the TIE fighters are far behind you. You see them disappearing off the scanners as they close in on the crash site that you were just at. From here, you know that you have this job for URZO the HUTT, who does his business out of a cantina casino in the mid-city level of Taris, if you would like to head there.
Does anybody have any reason we shouldn't go directly to URZO? I didn't think so.
Oh.
I'm punching in the coordinates and staying very low.
Keeping a low profile. Flying casual, as it were.
Right.
You have about an hour until you get to Urzo's den. Is there anything that you would like to do before you get there?
I would like to look into this droid's brain to see what it went through recently, how it was destroyed, and what it remembers, that kind of stuff.
There is some pretty heavy Imperial encryption, so I'm going to need a computer's check from you, please.
Okay. Here we go. Yes. It's going to be, oh my god, 28.
So you've got this thing laid out sort of on a makeshift workbench, almost like an autopsy patient with wires and pieces just kind of spilling out, and it's all interfaced with your data pad. It takes some time to break through the Imperial encryption, but you manage to do so and get into this thing's visual memory. As you do so, a hologram projects into the middle of the room. And anyone who's in the cargo hold sees this, and in fact, Viren, you're able to spin around in your chair and watch it as it plays out. You see a fairly Spartan-looking boardroom. By the look of the panels on the walls, this is clearly Imperial. There are several people in the room, all of them wearing Imperial officer uniforms. One of them stands from a table and speaks. Comrade, you know, the matter of which we speak today is of dire secrecy. The words we say, the plans we make cannot leave this room, for if they do, our plan is forfeit. We stand now at the brink of destruction. This upstart rebellion that our Emperor again and again underestimates is poised to deal another crippling blow. This time at Endor. It is imperative that we take control of our empire. We must make the decisions for our future, to ensure a future. The Emperor was a great man. He united a galaxy, brought order, peace, justice to the scattered Republic. It was he who brought to justice the Jedi who threatened the sanctity of the Republic. It is his legacy we seek to uphold, but the Emperor who now sits on the throne is not the same Emperor who united our galaxy. Operation Regicide must succeed. And it must be us who sit upon the throne. All of the Imperial officers nod. Now, we all have orders. Let's see to it. The hologram cuts out.
Can we watch it again?
When are we?
3 years after the Battle of Endor.
Okay.
Wow, that's a big bomb. So, I think that X's response would very practically be he would address everyone at once. Who would pay the most for this?
The men in the video?
Agreed.
Maybe?
You think that you could sell these to Imperials?
No, they would kill us. But I'm speaking sort of theoretically, they would pay the most, I think, because it incriminates them directly. And so, you see what I'm saying?
You were going for the literal answer. Hey, I walk over to where Rosh is, sort of on one of these tables on the side. Do me a favor, just very carefully. I need you to pick that head up and move off to the side, about 90 degrees. And then I lean past you, and I open up a compartment, and I pull out a package of Minoc jerky and start nervously eating.
I relate so hard to Viren.
I was going to say, I am you.
Is there an air fryer on this Lambda staff setup?
I get Rosh.
Barker, I just took a drink.
I get Rosh to make me a Mandalorian helmet air fryer. Well, I think that I would probably say, let's get this off of our hands and sell it to the Hutts.
Maybe.
Through a mouthful of jerky. Rush, did you check that to see if that is got any kind of homing beacons on it?
What, am I an amateur? He lies. Did not
That's
check.
not what I asked. I asked if you checked it.
Of course I checked it.
Looking for confirmation.
It didn't look like he checked it.
I'm immediately going to the cockpit, and I'm going to start looking for homing beacons to see if this thing is being tracked. It's coming from inside the ship.
I think I would say to Rosh, that is quite amateur, as I casually start with my hand inside the bag, like running my hands over the Mandalorian helmet for a tracking beacon.
Are any of the people in the video recognizable? Like, did any of them sort of become politicians afterwards or something? Or any of them?
That's a good question. Anyone who's curious about that could give me a streetwise check or just a basic knowledge check.
Question: if you roll one die, is it the destiny die?
Correct.
I don't follow politics.
I get a 10.
Anybody else rolling?
I don't think I would know that. I just don't think that would be something that I would know or care about.
Yeah. The man who was speaking looks familiar to you, Rosh. You can't recall a name, but you know that you've seen him maybe in a holovid at some point.
Okay. Yeah.
It's something like, I don't know what it is, like Randroff Rarkin or something. What is it? No, the clone of Rook Rywalker. I can't think of.
Yeah, so I guess you would say as much like, the man looks familiar from somewhere.
War crime posters, I'm betting.
Almost certainly. So Rush is like quiet, which means that he's like, you can hear his brain like sizzling as he's like trying to figure out what the best solution for this thing is. Because it's definitely important and valuable, but he can't figure out like how we get the least amount of heat and the most amount of money. And so he's just like trying to calculate that in his head.
Matt, what would our relationship be with the Hutts? Is it,
So you definitely have better standing with the Hutts than you do the Brood. Those are kind of the two major factions here on Taris in this time period. The Hutts are definitely more entrenched. They have more of a history here on Taris. The Haxion Brood are sort of like the upstarts that have come in the last decade and have sort of tried to muscle their way in. There's a lot of salvage to be had here on Taris, and so the Brood is very interested in all kinds of things that they could find here, augmenting themselves and their ships. The Hutts, especially URZO, you have done jobs for in the past. URZO maybe even leans on you a little bit for things that other people can't accomplish, and you've come to rely on him for a steady flow of income.
Okay. My edge is that I have a connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which, I'm tied to a notable figure, someone in a faction, something like that. And so I'm wondering if it could possibly be maybe, I'm trying to think of the right person that would actually be helpful in this. And I'm almost leaning towards like someone who's maybe a little more legit. Mm-hmm. Rather than someone scummy, you know what I mean? Right. And right. So I'm trying to think of who that would be.
Someone like ex-Imperial who ended up working security on Taris or something, like something like that.
That would be great.
Yeah. So maybe a former Imperial who works here on Taris, potentially doing, like Lloyd said, security for the Hutts or whatever. You might have a good relationship with them.
Okay, cool. So what I would want to do is try to connect with them somehow.
Okay.
And kind of see with, and so I would imagine that, that would be something that I would maybe send out, maybe I would get Vern's permission, sort of tell everyone that I know this person and that they can be trusted. And then basically ask if I can send an encrypted signal, through the ship's comms, and maybe even ask Rosh if he can help me encrypt it.
I would imagine that I would have, that would be pretty standard on the ship would be the ability to encrypt holo transmissions.
Oh, you got Napster?
Yeah.
No. You got LimeWire.
No. I pull out a disc. It says 1 month free of AOL.
I'm like,
I've been hoarding these babies. I got a year of this shit.
And so
like switching transponders and like changing our identity of the ship is like something that Rush is like practiced in,
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So there's probably even a schedule of like, time to change.
Yeah, time to rotate the transponder signal. Yeah.
So that's like the security code's a little old, but it checks out.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that I would ask them to put an especially, like basically I want to make sure that it gets there and that he's the only one or she's the only one that sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would emphasize like, no, this has to be not just the normal sneaky. This has to be bulletproof.
Right.
To Imperial level slicing.
Yeah. Okay,
and so
cool.
I'm kind of like, you know what I mean? So I'm like, we need to really lock this thing down and send this message.
So who is this person? Let's decide who this is. What's their name? What's your relationship to them?
Sure. What would be a fun race to explore, or do they Bernadette and Ern?
So the thing with Imperials is that they're fairly racist, and so this person is likely a human if they were an Imperial of any sort of
sense.
like importance. Yeah.
Okay,
Bernadette.
so I'm gonna do the worst thing. I'm actually gonna say his first name is Nern. Right?
That's a very Star Wars first name for sure.
It is.
That's exactly
Nern,
what
yeah.
it struck me as. So I'm gonna
How about Nern Burna?
I was gonna say Nern.
Nern Burna is kind of a perfect
that is
Star
the
Wars
most
name.
Star Wars name. I was gonna say Nern Detta, but Nern Burna is like
Nern
from the
Arnadette. Says Lloyd in the chat.
Okay.
Nern Arnadette,
There it is.
who was like a corporal in the Imperial Navy, but defected before the end and now lives on Taris.
Yeah, and I think maybe the exact relationship, I'm not sure, but X would have done quite a bit of scoundreling, and so maybe it has something to do with some sort of bodyguard scenario where, like, during the defection, there was a time where it was an opposite delivery where it's like a bounty of like, I need you to get me to X or Y safe. I need you to get me to this planet safely.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe I was a bodyguard for him.
Yeah, that makes sense. And let's say that he maybe owes you a favor. Like you went above and beyond at some point in protecting this guy. And you've been waiting like years to call in this favor. And now's the time.
Love it.
Cool. So you ping this person on an encrypted channel. It takes a little bit, but they respond. The face appears. Though Nern Arnadette has been living on Taris for some time, he still gives off an Imperial air. He's very, like, cut clean, hair slicked back, very prim, proper. Even though he's not wearing a uniform, you can see that it's pressed and nice. You can almost smell the cologne through the hollow. His face appears, and he says, X, it's been some time. To what do I owe the pleasure on this encrypted channel?
It's not a pleasure that you owe me, Nern. It's a favor. And I'm cashing it in.
I had a feeling that's what this was. Very well. Name it.
I would probably sort of like look around, even though there's no way that there's any like Imperials in here, but I would still just like, and I think I would also sort of scope out his background, if I could see any other figures or anything like that. And once I knew that it was clear and he was alone, I would explain to him. I would not give him too much information, but I would proceed to say, we have something that I believe is of interest to anyone with Imperial ties. Information that is galaxy altering, to say the least. And I need your help.
Doesn't particularly sound like something I want to get wrapped up in, X, but you once saved my life. I'll do what I can.
I appreciate it. And we will be considered square.
Very well. It's agreeable. So then, what is it?
And then I would turn to Vurin, and I would turn to Ayla, and I would turn to Rosh, and I'd say, So then, what is it?
We will tell him when we meet him in person alone. Rosh will say. He's like nervously like rubbing two of his tentacles together, because the idea of like telling this guy what we have and then he just goes off and uses it is very dangerous. So I think we have to be there with him.
Very well. We could speak here in my office. It's secure, safe, and away from prying eyes. If that is agreeable.
And X's eyes would sort of look, asking like, sound good?
Yeah, it's probably bugged, but I'll check before we start talking to him.
Certainly. And unless anyone had any other specifics or objections, I would also say to Vurin, I'd say, Vurin, what is it we need for the ship? Just sort of like, and really what I'm asking is, hey, we have a connected, probably reasonably well-to-do ex-Imperial who's probably found some sort of life as a politician or some sort of, corporation head, and essentially saying like, is there anything we need? Because I might be able to either get a good price on it or get him to cover it or, that kind of thing.
Without saying anything, I just reach back and point to where that hole is coming in through this, partway through the side and rub.
There's like wind whistling at the edge of it.
It's got that
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
metal's vibrating.
Like the window won't quite roll up all the way. Yeah.
It's doing that really deep.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like, can you open the window on the other side of the ship just a little?
The air pressure's
Halfway.
getting pretty bad. Yeah.
It's my wife every time.
While he's pointing, Ayla will say, a replacement is what we can get for the ship.
And X would laugh, knowing that Vurin, she's not much, Ayla, but she's got it where it counts. And then I would look to Ayla and I'd say, yeah, and is there anything you need?
She seems surprised by the question, but then thinks, take me to him. And she notes toward the holocron or the screen where this former Imperial is, Nern Arnadet. And she says, he looks rich.
And so then I would turn back to Nern and I'd say, that's a compliment, Nern. And I agree, you do look rich. And then I would essentially say, so I know it's a bigger favor than initially asked for. And then I would refer to something, and we can define it later, but it's probably whatever that was the most dangerous. All odds were against us, and he would have been dead if it wasn't for me. Like that sort of one miraculous, like, no, I got you out of that doom level of like, you shouldn't be alive, and maybe I lost an arm or something crazy. And I sort of refer to whatever that event is or the place it happened, some sort of keyword, as the sort of key in the lock of like, I want the hole in the ship repaired. I want the meeting in person, and I want help with this.
He's silent on the other end of the HoloNet. You see him kind of look off screen for a second, and then look back to you. This is becoming a bit more than a favor owed, X. but I'll see what I can do. I'm sending you coordinates to a landing pad. My guards will see you in, and from there, we can discuss this matter. The holovid fizzles out. And Star Wars screen wipe. You guys have landed on the landing pad, and there are two like silver chrome battle droids with blaster rifles standing there, and they usher you inside this private security firm that Nern owns and runs now here on Taris. They lead you through lavish corporate offices. Very few biological personnel here. Most of them are droids, heavily armed and armored, of the battle variety. They lead you down the hallway, up a couple of elevators, and finally into this sort of semicircle tower office with this immaculate view of the Taris skyline. You see air speeders kind of going past, and standing at the window, looking very imperial with his hands clasped behind his back, is Nern Arnadet. And he turns, looking all of you over, and then nods to the battle droid guards, and they step outside. He comes forward and puts out a hand towards you, X. Good to see you again, old friend.
Good to see you. And X would actually shake it cordially, like very carefully noting, his human biology.
And he gestures to all of you to sit on these like nice couches that are arranged around the room, and he seats himself as well. I'm not one to bandy words. You claim you have something of importance, something the Imperials may be interested in. You know I defected before the Empire fell at Endor, but I will do what I can to repay the favor I owe you. In the meantime, I have instructed my staff to see to the repairs of your fine ship. So,
is there some way that I could have effectively taken screenshots of the people's faces without having to play this guy the video?
Yeah, I imagine that would be a function that you could use on your data pad. You sort of like zoom around the hologram and take little screenshots. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. That's super smart. So that, and just kind of like in the meta, I would imagine on the way here, Rosh, I think you definitely would have made some sort of backup of this. I would think, right? This this hologram.
Totally. Yeah. And I think definitely, because all we need from him is, who are these people? Right? We don't need him to know about Operation Regicide.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's great. And so I was going to say that, like, also too, we would know each other, so I would know who would have the best sort of like bargaining skills or the best ability to sort of parlay with this person. I don't think it would be X.
I am known for being very skilled in my bargaining abilities.
And I think then I would actually say, Nern, I want you to meet Vern. He speaks for me.
He nods to you, Vern.
It's it is nice to meet somebody in your position.
And I'm trying to come across as very nervous to talk to this guy, but I'm not really.
He sits back in his chair and listens.
So, we've come into possession of something that, we think it is pretty valuable. We recognize that there is a certain value. And It seemed in our best interest to try to get the most money for our discovery.
Naturally.
And IG66X here thought that you, in your esteemed position, would be the one who could best help us out here.
At this point, I'm intrigued as to what has all of you fine gentlemen in such a tizzy. So, out with it.
Well,
And then I'll gesture over to Rosh. And
we have something that may indicate perhaps the indict maybe is the word. These fine gentlemen here, and the individuals.
and I'll hold out the data pad or gesture for Rosh to hold out his data pad to show the images to Nern.
Yep, I'll do so.
These are officers of the Imperial Navy. He scrolls through the images. These I don't recognize, but that's a lieutenant commander, a captain, commodore. That's a fleet admiral. No, this one. Go back. He goes back to the one that you recognized, Rosh. That. I know him. That's Rear Admiral Kenton Quill. Fairly well known. His maneuvers at the Battle of Sullust are legendary. He was slated for a Grand Admiralship someday. But of course, that didn't happen, did it?
Of course it didn't. And of course we recognize Rear Admiral Quentin Quill. That's why we knew it was something of value.
I'm afraid I don't know any of the others, though each of them has considerable rank.
And each of them is probably not sitting too well with the Republic, yes?
Well, I wouldn't presume to know. You can tell he kind of has something else he wants to say. Go ahead and give me a bargain check, if you would.
All 5D of it?
All 5D.
All 5D for the Rear Admiral.
Burning it.
My autobiography.
That's Tim's
I feel like with
autobiography.
5D,
is
this should have been
5D
better.
for the Rear Admiral.
This should have been better, but it's 16.
Co-written by Bernadette Nerd. So 16 on the bargain check. He looks at all of you. I have my connections with the Remnant, though I claim no allegiance to that splintered faction. I have heard the name Kenton Quill spoken in hushed tones following the Battle of Endor. He remains a considerable figure in the Remnant. I know he still commands considerable forces, maintains his reputation such that it is. Beyond that, I know nothing of his current whereabouts, or his standing within the Remnant.
But don't you agree that this information just the fact that we are able to identify this Kenton Quill and his continued involvement with these other individuals would be of incredible value to somebody.
All you have shown me is a blurry holovid of his face. I do not presume to tell you what the value is, unless you tell me the details.
I see this is not your first time playing Sabak. All right.
And I sort of settle my bulk into this chair. So, Viren Tokima is quite a skilled bargainer. Jake of Mini Terrain Domain is not.
Lies.
As I bargain for, or I'm just kind of looking around for the others if they want to.
I'll bet
add
you could get a
anything
new
to
shuttle.
this.
I bet you can bargain your way into a new shuttle for the specifics of the information.
But I don't want a new shuttle.
He wants his dancing lady.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Well, no, and like very meta, I think, but also I think fair. I think we would have like on the way over, we probably would have decided what we were going to tell him and how, and like really hashed it out for the trip. You know, the amount of time that wipe took. So I think that if you're cool with it, I think we could maybe talk out of character about what we would have decided to tell him.
Absolutely.
So what do you guys think? Because I think we would have at least gotten to this logical conclusion that if he did know them, he would probably ask for more. Like we would have gotten that. So what do you guys think we should actually do? Like, what should we tell him? Should we lie? Should we test him? Like, what would we have decided?
I think maybe we could spring as far as like we know that he was involved in an operation that was treasonous in the Empire. You know, like something like that, without giving away exactly what it was and what. I don't know.
Yeah, and say that we have proof, but not give any further details, and copies of the proof, and maybe even go as far as to have Jake lie, and say that, and if anything happens to us, that proof is set to leak, like in X amount of time, like you know what I mean, like. So that we feel protected as well.
And I'm skilled in deception as well.
Nice. So, how do you guys all feel about that? You good with that, Barker? Or does that sound about where you'd like? Would Ayla have any objections to any of that stuff?
I don't think it's Ayla's place at all to even open her mouth at a time like this. Legitimately, I don't think she would.
Okay, for sure. And I think
I think she would look for something specifically. I think she would be always side glancing everywhere to see if there's something like valuable that she could pocket.
Nice.
I'm totally on board with the idea of sort of not showing them telling them the real information, trying to deceive them into thinking it's less than. It's still pretty big, but it's not the exact thing that we know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all that works for me. And I think X wouldn't also be, he'd just be more kind of like looking back and forth of like, hey, whatever. Like,
so did he say that this guy is still with the Imperial Remnant? Is that what he said?
Yeah, he said that he was kind of like a prominent figure in the Remnant.
Okay,
was that
so
like a
was...
capital T, capital R, the Remnant?
Yeah, because it's what's left of the Empire, and after the Battle of Endor, they flee into the Outer Rim, and eventually they become the First Order, but right now they're sort of like kind of fighting each other, but also like gathering and like uniting under different like Imperial leaders, so he's kind of a big deal still.
So I wonder if this would be valuable information to other factions in the Imperial Remnant. Like, is that who's going to pay for it? Like, this guy wanted to kill the Emperor. He's not one of us, you know, like...
Look at him.
That's something maybe... I'm just trying to think who would pay for this, because it's actually not that useful because the Emperor's already dead, you know? So, like, going back in time and being like, oh, I would have killed that king when the king is dead, it's like not that bad you know? It's not a crime to say a king is dead when he's dead.
Sure, sure.
So then it's
Right.
like who wants this information and who will pay us for it? And I think maybe it's other Imperials, but like they're likely to just shoot us, you know?
Well, yeah, and it seems very obvious that the Imperials, given that we saw 6 TIE fighters screaming in on something that was shot down by Imperials. So I think based on what you're saying, it sounds like we want to use Nern to leverage his Imperial connections to be a go-between with Imperials without us having
Right.
to actually interact,
Or just give
at
us
least,
contact.
yeah, giving us the safe contact to
This is
an Imperial connection.
This is also very meta, but he said that he still has connections with the Remnant, right? So he might know that an Imperial cruiser has entered the system, and he might know whose it is directly without us showing any video.
What if I play that angle? Sort of saying, using that as the sort of in lieu of showing him the video, just saying, we know about the Imperials in the system. We know that Imperials are scouting the surface, and we know what they're looking for.
I'd be open to that. And then what are we trying to get from specifically? So that's the leverage we kind of play. And then we want in return a contact in the Remnant.
Someone high up in the Remnant, that's if he knows that there are factions, a faction that opposes this guy, right? Like some rear admiral of a different faction, like someone high up who has already a reason to dislike this guy, you know?
Yeah, that's really smart. So I think that someone who's rocking 4Ds and is looking for the 5th. But I think though that is actually a brilliant idea, despite being barely human. So Matt, maybe that. And
I'm not
if
supposed
that's
to touch my face right now.
I know we're all I'm like picking my nose and.
I'm not supposed to have a beard either, so
yeah, well, I'm screwed.
So then, yeah, maybe we just, essentially give him what Jake has just mentioned. We know of the Imperials in the system. We know they're on the surface. We know they're looking for something. And then we ask for the contact in the faction that would be most interested in what we know against this guy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So are we back to bargaining and less deception at this point then?
Seems like it, because you're just letting him know a little bit of the truth and not deceiving him. So, yeah.
Just lifting a corner of the tarp, not letting them see what's under it completely.
Right.
Ooh, yeah. Showing a little knee in Amish community.
So you basically tell him that you know about the Imperial starship. Is that what you tell him?
Yeah, we know that they're in the system. We know that they've got scout ships. We know what they're looking for.
He kind of leans back in his chair. They're here for you, then. Whatever you found. They're looking for the same thing.
They're looking for the person who found something, not us.
Yeah, we didn't exactly say that. Those are not the words I used.
No. Once they find this person, who I assume is no longer with us, then they will be looking for you. How interesting. The ship that entered the system today is a Raider-class corvette. Has a complement of TIE fighters, as well as 2 TIE Reaper landing craft. Likely a legion of stormtroopers. The Empire is far from its glory days, but there are pieces left.
Those are some pretty big damn pieces.
Yes. And under the command of one Rear Admiral Kenton Quill. I anticipate that Quill would pay handsomely for this information. There's like a tense moment where he kind of lets these words hang in the room, and then he says, and I also assume that Quill would just as soon kill me for being involved in it.
And I think X would... Oh, man, I'm trying to decide if he wouldn't draw his blaster, but he would twitch his arm over to the side where it hangs, and he'd say, but not sooner than we would. Don't forget who got you here. I would never kill you unless you made me.
I don't intend on making you, X. And in fact, I'm glad you didn't tell me more than you did. That's not a burden I wish to bear alongside you. This intel you have on Quill, what do you wish to do with it?
Well, it seems to be pretty valuable. The information seems like it is going to be very valuable, especially to him. So we're looking to, as I said, to get the most bang for our buck. You know, highest bidder and all that kind of.
You mentioned that you wanted the most money. You wanted to leverage this intel to the greatest effect. The four of you are bounty hunters, are you not? The intel on Quill would be valuable, sure. Quill himself? Now there's a quarry for you. And that's where we're going to end our game tonight.
All right.
Nice. You have to do a little more prep now, huh?
Yeah.
Look,
we reached the end of the track that I'm laying in front of this train.
The Wallace and Gromit scene.
Yeah, yep. No, thank you everyone for tuning in, for watching. This was a lot of fun. I'm going to let these guys do their sign off, and then we're going to go ahead and call it. We have another session of this campaign. It's just a 2-shot. Same time next week, so make sure you tune in for that, for episode 2 of Star Wars Quarry. Let's go ahead and go in reverse order, counterclockwise. Jake.
That's my name. I'm Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, and that's where you can find me on YouTube and on Twitch. I'm on Twitter. It's over here at MTD_Jake to stay up to date on everything that's going on in the Mini Terrain crafting domain and D&D live streaming space. Because these days, the internet is where you want to get all your entertainment.
That's right. All right, Tim, go ahead.
It's really fun. It's like watching a really good improv guitarist just kind of go nuts. And you're like, how much of this is planned and patterns and how much of this is just literally. So it was like, I always love watching you DM because you're not afraid to go, yeah, that's feeling really good right now. I'm just going to ride this tasty little riff right now. And it's like, I love that. So I'm really excited to see where this game goes. And I loved how quickly we sort of all found our places in terms of like the characters, and it feels like we're a crew that's been together for a long time. And so, yeah, I love it. And I cannot wait for next week.
Me neither. All right, Barker.
it's really worth it to say that the whole second half of this session happened because Tim said that he had a connection on his character sheet. That is everything that happened because of a single tiny little edge on the character sheet, and it all felt just as real as the cool chase scene at the beginning, if not more so. So really, really awesome session. My name is Barker, and you can follow me on Twitter at Inspire the Barks. I have paid Lloyd to make overlays. I have subscribed to Matt's and Jake's Patreon, and I tune into Tabletop Terrors videos twice a week for their quick tips and the deep dives. And so all of this stuff is found at the Absolute Tabletop official group. So you should go there and check it out, and check out the community, and run your own games, and invite people to play in your own games, and check out all the great content that's coming from this just communal gathering of weirdos. I love them all.
It is a fairly lovable bunch of weirdos, that's for sure. All right, Lloyd, take us away.
It was great. It's real fun just being like, okay, we're going to follow this now. Is that cool? And you're like, yep. That was great. It was a lot of fun. It's also fun playing like the not Lloyd character for once. Usually I'm the guy who does all the talking and all the shooting, and so I'm not doing it this time. That's an interesting situation. I'm Lloyd. I run JarlDM. I have books on drive-through under Scald Publishing if you want to check those out. And I'm real hyped for the next session.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you for tuning in. As always, the rules to Hyperspace are down in the description below. You can check it out. It's a totally free game. It's Creative Commons. You can play it and hack it as you see fit, based on the old West End Games D6 rule set. So catch us again next week, same time, same place. We'll be finishing up this fun campaign, and we'll see what happens next. So take care, everyone. Happy gaming all, and may the Force